Awesome. Thank you so much. And hi, everybody. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to walk you through what's in Purview and then how we are thinking about growing this. Um, I'm not able to share my. I am.
Yes,
All right.
yes.
So let me get started. So, if you are new to Microsoft Purview, let me give you a very quick introduction. What does it do and who is it for? Microsoft Purview is a unified governance platform that is meant to start with data discovery and take you all the way to understanding, the risk in your data, whether it is compliant with regulations or not. Those are things that you can derive. So there are basically two, stacks, if you will. One is, we want to make our chief data officer and their community more agile so that users and data consumers are not blocked by a DBA giving them access to the data, or business users looking for data can't find it across the data estate. So all those data engineers, data scientists, analysts, data stewards, they all want better discovery of the data, because data is the real commodity now, and we want to make sure that organizations are benefiting from that, the enriched data that they have already acquired, and not just keep it locked in their storage systems, right? There's a lot of money spent in storing all that data, so you better make the data come, make money for you. So that's the data monetization piece. The other is whether the data is being rightly used, right? And that's where the privacy officers, information security officer, and the data officer, they spend their day thinking about, are we overexposing the data? Is the data ready to be, governed? Is it compliant? Are we complying by various regulatory laws, or, the corporate policies? All of those are mainly the reasons why, unfortunately, today, much of the data in our customers' data estate is not exposed to the commercial team. So, what Purview brings in here is the balance between the two worlds. We want uh, the data consumers to consume data and request for access all automatically and scale their work, while giving the peace of mind to the C-suite about, governance, security, and privacy. So with that, this is what Microsoft Purview looks like today. Microsoft Purview has a very rich platform which is called the data map. The data map contains data assets, lineage, classification, and business context on your data. You can build business context by adding glossary terms to your data, which is, making your data more discoverable by your data consumers, as well as we've recently announced the public preview of meta models, which is a way to essentially add business context to your data, a semantic layer. So you can now define what are your data products, which department your data products belong to, and who are the data product owners, and then basically map it for your business users to actually get access and understand your data better. Most organizations do not talk in terms of tables and columns and files. They talk in terms of data products, data sets, data elements. That's how even governance actually can be generalized, with non-technical audience. That is our, ultimate goal. And so meta models now help you do that, right? So all that exists in the data map. And data map is, hydrated in many, many ways. We have more than 50 data sources that you can register and scan, right, with a few clicks of buttons. You can use our APIs to push metadata in. And we are trying to find more innovative ways so that you have least resistance in pushing metadata into the data map so that data becomes more discoverable. Now, on top of this rich platform, we have basically two already GA apps. One is the data catalog, which is where your search and browse and data discovery happens. Very shortly, I'll walk you through a demo and I'll show you how it works. And then we have data estate insights, which is the newest member of the apps community, which is essentially addressing the chief data officer's problems about where is all my data and whether it is classified or not, and giving you information around management and governance of your data. Then the next piece is data share and data policy. Both are in public preview at the moment. Data share is a secure way of sharing data across tenant, across companies. And then data policy is to apply governance and access control on your data. Right now, we allow auto provisioning of self-service data access on Azure SQL database and storage. So they are basically the two ways, but we are always expanding the scope of Microsoft Purview. We are bringing in various data sources that you can see on the right-hand side. This is just, Microsoft land, but then we are bringing in more on-prem and multi-cloud and operational and analytical systems to enrich your data map so that Purview becomes your main catalog and that you don't have to go through various different catalogs that may exist in products to just govern and manage your data estate. All right. I think I've mostly covered this. You already probably are aware that we are expanding our scope in just Microsoft Cloud itself, and one of them is M365, which we are, which Microsoft 365 through the Compliance Center already provides you, data on your data estate with, let's say, SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, and all of that. We are trying to, with Microsoft Purview as our announcement, we are trying to bring all of that under one hood so that you don't have to go around looking for data everywhere. All right, so today's discussion, this is probably a slide that, it gets presented a lot, but we are going to talk about just the right-hand side. Oops. Which is the unified governance platform for the data consumers, producers, and curators. Very quickly, here is, I will walk you through the demo as well, but I just wanted to kind of give you a quick recap. Like I mentioned, petabytes of data can exist in your cloud scale data map, and you can actually discover and add more data sources through, our, few clicks registration and scanning process. Once you have registered, your data map is ready to be consumed from Purview's data map. And how we try to organize your data is through collections. It's also a way to give access control over your data. So collections are nothing but logical groupings of your data assets. You can put your data assets on metadata, I should say. Your data doesn't move, it's just the metadata. You can design it and put it in collections and then give access to a collection. We've already talked about this, so I'm going to skip this slide and go into more details. Here's the data catalog, right? We talk about what is the data catalog and how is it different from the data map. The data map is truly a huge complex information graph of your data estate, right? But not everything needs to be surfaced in the catalog because the catalog users don't care about every detail. Catalog is really for the data consumers, and we are trying to expand the scope from just the business users to data stewards as well, and see how we need to separate the views across the two personas. But the data catalog is where your search and browse experience starts. Once the data comes into the data map, through the data catalog, we'll give you an experience where you can search, you can browse, you can curate your data assets, you can request for access on the underlying data, all from the data catalog. Then comes the data estate insights. Like I mentioned, it is an aggregated view, and the capability of drilling down into asset by asset detail is available. I'll shortly walk you through, where we tell you how many assets are there, how many data sources have you brought in, what classifications apply on them, what labels apply on them, and how is it doing over time. All that information will be available for data estate insights. Again, a view from Data Estate Insights, where we tell you, what classifications exist and, what are the top classifications that we have found on your data. Now comes data policy. Like I mentioned, data policy is, we recently announced public preview of auto provisioning of self-service data access on Azure Purview, on Azure SQL database. But essentially what it means is your data consumers are looking for data to, let's say, build reports. You're an analyst. You have to build reports and dashboards for, let's say, the C-suite in your organization. You're looking for the right data. You found the right data through the catalog. Now you need access. We are cutting short the old way of reaching out to the DBA or the data owner and asking for access, or getting a dump of the data in an Excel file and working off of it. But now we are saying with a click of one button, you can request for access and the approver will approve it. So that's what data access actually is. And then comes data sharing, right? So this is where the consumer provider relationship exists. Today, we have something called Azure Data Share, but we are also bringing into the Purview's fold what we call as Purview Share, right? With Purview Share, any asset that is available in Purview and you are, let's say, an owner on that asset, you can share it with, you can be a provider, you can share it with a consumer. All you need to do is send that invite to the data consumer, and the data consumer will be able to access the data without you having to move the data around. No more copies required. It is, basically building, giving a pointer to your data, and it can happen within the same region across tenants. Most secure way of basically transacting your data without really creating multiple copies and sending copies to vendors. Of course, we are looking at third-party integrations. So Sentinel integration already exists. We are trying to, kind of expand this relationship further and also bring in more non-Microsoft integrations in place. If you haven't noticed this, Ignite, we have announced a partnership with OneTrust, so that on top of this rich data map, now OneTrust can also build and kind of close the gap for privacy users and provide that privacy assessment that is required. And the baseline is still the data map, right? So knowing where your data is, on which privacy assessments can be done. We already have, a very tight partnership with Prophecy for MDM, which is, all the time we keep getting this request for where is the golden copy, where's the golden record, how do we, match and merge our data. All of that, with the help of Prophecy and Azure Purview, is available to you today. And with that, I think I'll, take a pause and see if there are any questions, or I can answer any questions from the Q&A and then probably give you a quick demo of the product. Cecilia, does that sound good?
Yes, amazing. So there is a Q&A section. Feel free to drop your questions there. We had one question already from Polly. She's asking if some of our databases have built-in lookup tables with friendly names for all columns in all tables. Is there a way to import these names into Purview without having to type them individually in the user interface?
That's a really good question. And I think I have to probably dig deeper into this. I would like to get this scenario and see what your lookup table has. The thing with lookup tables is it's the content that probably contains the friendly name. And because we are scanning the metadata, as long as the metadata, your friendly name exists as a metadata, we can bring that in. And I think we are already, because in Azure sources, you can give a friendly name when you spin up a new database, let's say, or storage system. We will bring that into Purview's data map. What we don't do is, if your lookup table actually has friendly names within it, that mapping is probably something we don't do. But let's see if there are other workarounds. I'll try to get some questions answered offline as well. So feel free to drop me.
365, Juan Torres, he's asking 365 includes dynamics?
We are working on expanding it to dynamics as well. But right now it's on the roadmap. It's not available.
And Victor is asking, the assets in the data states can detect changes. How often can it track those changes? Hour, daily, weekly, etc.?
Great question. So two separate probably threads of conversation. If you're looking for just change tracking, we are working on change data capture sort of a feature, which is essentially going to help you with tracking of changes, which is on the roadmap. We are working on it. I think it's going to light up in the next few months. What Insights is giving you is not an hourly, weekly, or daily sort of changes, but it's giving you an aggregation. What we are trying to show you is in the last 30 days, what are the net new assets that came in? In the last 30 days, how many assets did you delete and from where did you delete it? It's an aggregation for the chief data officer and data stewards who are not looking at, hourly, weekly, that granularity of detail. For that granularity, you are better served to use the change tracking mechanism that we are working on right now. So this is Microsoft Purview today. So you come into, when you land, you first see our search bar. You can browse by assets, you can manage glossary terms, and there's a knowledge center. So what we tell you is, how many sources there are that are registered in the data map, how many assets, and how many glossary terms, just a very high level view. Now you can type as a data consumer anything that you are looking for. So I was, just looking for sales data, and I wanted to sort of go into the catalog experience and go into the search results and see how many sales related data there are, right? As you can see on the left navigation, I can actually narrow down the scope by tables, stored procedures, reports, dashboards, all of these different things, right? And depending on what you're looking for, you might be interested in one versus the other. So you can always scope down your filters based on the available facet filters. You can look at the business metadata as well, which we are still, in public preview. So a lot of it might not have the mapping, but we have, data products, domains, business processes, and all of these business assets will also be searchable from the search. We have organization. Again, keep in mind, these are all part of meta models. So you have to set it up. Until you set it up, it will be blank. So right now, line of business is blank because I have not set it up. Departments, I did. So that's why you see the departments that I have called out, which actually are mapped to the data sets. Similarly, you can, browse by, you can search and filter by collections, classifications, contacts, and so on and so forth. Lots of nice facet filters to use. And once I click on any of these data assets, I get to see the asset detail page, right? Now, keep in mind, I have an access that is basically the curator. And as a data curator in Purview, I can actually edit this asset. I can add more description. I can say, hey, let's say this is, sales data from Q3 to Q4 2022. This is my description. If I want to add a glossary term, I can search for the glossary term. And let's say if there's any marketing and sales, I can attach that as well. If I want to add any classification on the schema, this is Keep in mind the schema came in as we were registering and scanning. So this is how your columns look. Let's say this is sales order and I want to add a specific classification to this. Let's say this is, let's see, or maybe I should pick this. Let's say this is date of birth. You know, I can even manually tag this asset with date of birth and hit save. Let's see what it does. Now that it is saved, it has a description. The schema now has an additional classification, which I manually added. And rest of the stuff that existed from the past, I could also, edit contacts and add a data steward, add an owner, add myself as an expert, any of that is possible. What is interesting over here is also that if you have scanned something and, as we scan, we also bring in stored procedures now. And if your Azure SQL database has stored procedures, every 6 hours, we will be ingesting its lineage as well as and when there is an execution on your stored procedure. Let's say I, executed my stored procedure today. Sometime later today, the path will be mapped in lineage graph without you having to do anything. So that is, I think that dynamic lineage in Azure SQL DB is a great feature. We announced GA of that feature during Ignite, and you should definitely test it out. I will also provide a demo link for you to check that out. Another interesting feature that we have public previewed is now you can add manual lineage as well. So let me try another thing and show you how it works. Now, given that, we work with so many data sources and so many different pipelines that may not be ingested into the catalog very easily. They may be old systems, whatever. Or you probably are just, transferring data on a monthly basis via emails, but you want to capture its lineage. Yes, you can do that now. So I can add a lineage. I can say, let's say, sales LT table produces, let's say, an asset which is already existing in my data map, and I'm going to say it's this particular CSV file. So what I'm doing right now is I'm saying this particular text file is also producing another asset, which is two-wheel sales data.csv. As I hit save, this manual lineage is now there for the record for you to do root cause analysis if and when necessary, right? So as an analyst, I find it extremely helpful because now all those ETL processes that could not be mapped, at least I can map it here and, I can do a thorough end-to-end analysis if something breaks down. All right.
You have one question.
Yeah,
Sunetra.
sure.
Paul is asking if will the store procedure lineage be added for SQL Server, not Azure, in the future?
The stored procedure dynamic lineage using Azure SQL database and its stored procedures is available right now today. We do have static lineage already, and we are expanding its scope to go into SQL Server on-prem as well. So it's on the roadmap, but it is not available today. But you should be hearing about it soon in the coming months.
Awesome.
Cool. Now, going back, right? We talked a little bit about meta models, right? Let's talk a little bit more about what they are and what they try to achieve for the customer, right? So as you could see in the search experience, everything was, most of the view is very technical, right? Today in the search and browse, in case you want to go back again, I'll just show it to you. Starts with tables, resource sets, and, all those technical stuff that you might understand, but a lot of business users may not. So how do we make sure that your data is truly democratized in your organization is through meta models. What meta models gives you is a feature where you can organize your data by organizations, lines of business, and also give business metadata names to your data assets. So if a data product contains 10 tables, customers just have to look at the data product, not those tables, right? And so where does it all start? It starts at asset types. This is what we give you out of the box today in public preview. My colleague, who is the PM for this feature, she is working very hard to make sure that this is more business understandable and it doesn't look so gory and so messy. But essentially what we are trying to do is trying to give you out of the box mappings that exist between these different assets. So as you can see, a data domain is a concept that says, data domain owns data sets. That means anytime you add a data domain, you connect it to a data set, we know that the relationship between the two is an ownership relationship, right? What it is actually in the backend is just a relationship. It's not going to change the hierarchy view or your data underlying, but it will help business users understand the relationship that may exist between different business assets. As you can see also here, organizations can contain lines of business. Lines of business can contain departments, or departments can be grouped in lines of business, and organizations can also directly contain lines of business or departments. These concepts are very important when we think about ontology and when we think about, how do we make data more accessible to business users. So, let's go back and look at how do you implement, because this is a map that typically, unless you're an admin, you wouldn't need to come here and do anything with it, right? But if I go back to my, let's say, search and browse, and I go into sales header order where I was before, I can actually find a way to connect it to more business assets and see if actually, what, I won't do it this way. There's a better way to do this. Let's say I created some lines of business or some departments, right? I work in retail finance. So I want to go, I've created retail finance as an object. Now I want to edit it and add maybe a glossary term to it, which I can do. I can add experts and owners. Let's say I am the owner, so I'm going to add myself to this. And I'm going to make sure that I see any linked assets that there may be. I can add more assets to it, or I can keep the assets that already exist. So as you can see, there is already a grouping that exists over here. So I don't have to do anything over here. But if I want to add more consumer products, then I can say this particular data asset, retail finance, consumes hardware customer product. I can view the selected item. Yes, looks good. Hit OK. And now this asset gets linked over here and I hit save. So anytime I look up retail finance, I can immediately see what data product consumes it, how is it grouped together, who is the contact that I need to contact for, let's say this is the department head. I need to reach out to somebody who can tell me more. All of that can be done just by searching for retail finance. Let me take a pause and see if that makes sense or if you have more questions.
We have one question from Victor. He's asking if there is a website for the roadmap on Purview.
That's a good question. I think there is. I just need to be, I need to check how we can share it with this community. I'll come back to you. Probably I'll reach out to Cecilia. All right. Now going back, I should show you some more features of the product. There's browse by asset. Right now, we give you browse by collections, which is, like I mentioned, a logical grouping of your data assets. You can actually also give access control based on the collections, but you can also browse by source type. If I don't want to look for something in particular and I'm just browsing, I can use this path to actually go and look for, what ADLS Gen 2 storage systems are registered. I can go down the path and see exactly what data systems are available, what files, and then potentially go into the asset detail and see that file or its properties. There is one. So browse by asset is also a very interesting way of looking at your data estate. Most of the times we hear a lot about Power BI reports and dashboards, right? What Power BI reports are registered in Purview Data Map? Very easy now. Click on Power BI as a source type, go into the details, look at what projects are available, and if this is something that you're interested in, go ahead and look for, who are the contacts that you might want to reach out to, or what's the exact lineage. So this is where really Purview comes together very well, because now we actually show you an end-to-end lineage view of all the Power BI artifacts so that you can actually track it. And we are trying to get this back to the base source system. So, you will see in short order that we can map it all the way from your storage system to your, tables and servers, and all the way to the reports that you produce from those tables. So very excited about this view. Glossary terms, it's still evolving. We are trying to put more automation in glossary terms, but one thing that we get asked a lot is, can we have more of glossary term automation? Because customers want to put glossary terms on everything. Now it's super simple. We have term templates. You can either use a default template, you can add more of your custom templates, and you can add a glossary term as you want, and you can link it to any of the data assets that you might want to link it to. It's fairly simple. I think glossary, we all understand terms are required for every single asset, whether you want to make it discoverable or not. It's a business understanding of your data. So we encourage that customers add more and more terms to every single data. Going to, let's say, data estate insights. Now, this is where, we serve the CDOs, the data stewards, and help them basically figure out what's all that you saw. Search and browse is great, but it is for consumption purpose, right? But there's no summary. To view the summary, you must come into data estate insights. And this is where we tell you how many assets are fully curated, partially curated, or not curated. Let me take a step back. First, we start with, our data stewardship, which gives you a breakdown of all your data estate. We tell you where did we find sensitive classifications, what's the curation level of your data if you have set anything. If you haven't, we'll go by our defaults. How many data assets we know an owner about, assets without any classification, out of date assets, and so on and so forth, right? And we allow you to basically parse it by collection, but in the future, we'll give you the same view by organization and lines of business that you saw meta models. You can now see asset curation as a percentage as well. But what is asset curation? Out of the box, we define as long as an asset has an owner, a description, and at least one classification, it's fully curated. But we are working on giving you as a user the ability to define what curation means in your company. Right? A lot of customers come back to us and say, hey, if an asset does not have a glossary term, we don't consider that as curated. So that's your definition, and we encourage you to come and fix that definition. So we are working on, giving that capability to you in the coming, months. You can also see at a high level what's the trend, how many assets did you add on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and how many curated or classified data did we find, how many assets with some owner or no owner, like all of those information you can now see right from here. And you can also go into view details, and basically if you want to track exactly the asset, you will now be able to do it just by clicking on some. As you can see, you can actually look at the exact asset, which collection it belongs to. If it's not curated and you have the right permissions, and click on the asset, edit right from here, add whatever you want. Student, and you hit save. That change has been made in the catalog. It will not reflect in insights till the next refresh. But once the refresh happens, this not curated will turn into partially curated, because description part of curation. Another thing is, this is asynchronous. So we refresh data estate insights once a week, mainly to, keep your costs down. But we are coming up with a feature where you can increase the frequency if you want. Excuse me. More to add, how is your catalog being adopted in your company, right? How many users do you have on search and browse or asset curation? We track all of those. We tell you what are the most viewed assets in your organization. What search keywords were added in your organization. So we are right now restricting it by the top 5, but very soon we are going to give you the full list so that you can actually go about making it more useful. A lot of data curators ask us, data stewards, they want to make their catalog more useful. And so this is one place where we want to actually generate more use by giving you insight that can help your organization grow. Then comes assets. Same idea, but more detail. Now we tell you assets that are, how many net new assets were added in the last 30 days, how many assets were updated in the last 30 days, what are those assets that actually did not get updated at all. So those are today in our definition tail assets, but we are changing that definition. We are right now looking at 30 days only, but we want to expand it to 90 days. So if an asset has not been updated in the Purview data map for the last 90 days, we will consider that as out of date, which means that you must either auto scan it or tell us why it's out of date. Maybe you need to delete this asset together. And so on and so forth. Like, I'm not going to boil this entire thing down. I think in general, the idea is clear. We want to show you what you have in a summary and also give you an understanding of where is all your risky or high profile data that you may want to protect over time. So this is where we today give you out of the box dashboards, but on our roadmap, we have ability to customize it, bring in Power BI embedded experience. And so all of those are coming in the. I'll again take a pause and see if there are any questions.
No questions in the Q&A.
All right. Rest of this is, still in public preview. As you can see, policies is in preview. You can have a self-service access policy. We already have access policies on certain features. Okay, let me show you. So if I have a policy which says, a policy is nothing but, a rule that says if a customer asks, if any data user is asking for access on, let's say, a table, which is, let's say, sales order header, then given certain rules, the user should get access to the underlying data source. So let's say I am an analyst and I have looked at the schema, looks great. I can use this for my reporting. I want to get access to this data. This data is already, this asset is certified, which means somebody has made sure that it has all the information and this is the golden copy. Great. I want to build a report out of it. So I want to request for access. Now, with a click of this button, request access, I can type in, the reason why I'm asking for access, need to create a dashboard for sales. And I can call out whoever is the sales team, let's say ABC leader, right? I send the request, and within minutes, the request will be sent over to the approver to request for approval. Now, because I am one of the curators, I should also be able to see in workflows, which is requests and approvals, which it has not yet up. There it is. You see, there is a request which is pending approval, and I can see it. I can even see who is the requester, what artifact is she requesting access on, when was it submitted, and what should I do with it, right? So I can click on my pending requests. Keep in mind, I have the access, that's why I can do it. But in real world, this would go to your data owner. I click on it and I see that, okay, there are 3 people who are requesters, who can approve this. Great. I need to close this, and I think I can approve it from here. So I can approve or reject. Let's say I approve and I hit confirm. What happens is I don't have the credentials for the data source, but the table that I requested access for, when I go into that SQL table, through any of the tool of choice, I will be able to actually query and use the table and connect it to my dashboard, all with a click of a few. So that's the self-service access policy that we have shipped as public preview today, and we are working on expanding the scope of it to data sources. Right now, it's limited to SQL and storage, but we are working on Cosmos DB and other data sources.
We have a question from Victor. He's asking, are there any policies that revolve around regulations such as HIPAA? I'm looking for standardizations instead of glossary terms.
That's a good question. So today our policies we are expanding our scope for policies and workflows. Today the policies are restricted to access policy only and access at a table level. We are working on giving access policies for attribute level as well. But if you are thinking about HIPAA-based policies, or what is the collection of policies that we need to implement for a certain regulation, that is probably going to be achieved through integrated solutions like OneTrust. And we are also working on it, but nothing out of the box that you can use today. But you can put together policies once we light up more finer grained access control. HIPAA and other things. Right. Anything else that I can answer? If not, I think that was it from my side on the demo.
Polly, do the permissions get automatically granted when approved is clicked? For example, is someone automatically added to an Active Directory group?
Yes. So before the policy gets approved, a policy has to be written. And so let me share what that self-service policy looks like. So the policy that got written, basically, this is the policy that gets created, but Actually, it's nothing but a workflow. So basically what happens is this guy right here. So it's a workflow policy that basically tells you that what conditions need to apply and what access needs to be granted. So in the condition, we basically have already mentioned that a policy needs to be approved with a certain outcome. When we say what is the access grant that we need, we essentially mention, this is not mentioned over here, but you can mention for how long the customer needs to have access to that policy. The policy is going to assume that uh, the user identity is already part of the Active Directory. And so only employees of your company can get access to that data, and for a limited time, for a limited scope, nothing beyond it. But we are working on more policy, language that will help you expand the scope of who gets access to that particular policy through the policy on the data source.
So I enable everyone's microphone. If you want to go on mute and ask a question, feel free. I don't know, Polly, if now you can maybe try.
Yes, I can now. And I did have one more question. I'm confused about what is an out-of-date asset. I don't understand. Does that mean it's listed in Purview, but when the latest scan happened, it couldn't find it? Or what does that mean? I don't understand it.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, out-of-date asset is actually a stale asset according to Purview. So, Purview works on a certain principle that you have basically pushed the metadata into Purview's data map on a regular basis, right? So, let's say you registered and scanned a data source, and you have put auto scanning every 1 month, which is normally what we see customers do. Once a month, they scan the data source to see if there's any schema changes. Is there any new information added on the data source, on assets? If an asset has not been scanned for over a certain period of time, we consider that asset as out of date. That means either you have to register and scan it, or we are seeing a new scenario where customers say, hey, we don't want to scan it or rescan this because it was meant to be scanned just once. So we are trying to enable a feature that will allow you to mark it as, as scanning for once, or, ignore. Like it'll stop showing up as an out of date asset altogether in your report. But that's the meaning behind out of date, which means you have not scanned it at a specific period of time.
Thanks.
I have a question. Yes. Is there a possibility that you end up with orphaned objects or whatever? And is there a maintenance for that?
Can you define
Is
an
that
orphaned object?
well? I guess you just basically talked about a stale one or out of date, but everything has its connection, its parent and structure. So if for any reason something gets deleted and some data asset gets behind or some temporary file or whatever, is there a way to identify that and clean that or try to reconnect?
That's a good question. I believe so. Today, there is no way in Insight to do that, but I believe from the monitoring side of the house, this is being discussed because, yes, there are scenarios where you can have orphaned assets, because let's say a delete job did not run very well or it left some
Correct.
residue. That is possible, but it's not covered in Insight. So, something that's on the roadmap for monitoring, and I think it should light up in the coming few waves.
Okay, thanks.
I do want to say that another definition that we hear a lot about orphaned assets is if a data asset doesn't have an asset hierarchy, that means it doesn't map up to, let's say, a server or a storage system. And that is
Right.
something that we are looking into. Another definition that we hear is if with all the lineage capabilities that we are lighting up, if a data asset doesn't have the lineage, we should consider that as orphan. So yes, those are very legitimate scenarios that we will light up once we also enable lineage from non-Microsoft lineage graphs.
Okay. One one more thing, and perhaps something that we're not used to, but moving in the direction of IoIT and sensors, there's going to be maybe some assets that are dormant or disconnected for a while or in a schedule, and they necessarily may not be orphaned but dormant or something like, or disconnected, something like that.
Yeah.
So that's something you'll keep in mind because depends on the implementation, and we're going to have new devices that have double SIMs and a bunch of other stuff. So just keep in mind that some of those assets you may want to have access to or track them at least, but they may have a different behavior that we're usually used to.
That's a good point. Yep.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you.
We have a question from Victor. So is there integration with Active Directory?
Yes. There is, like, the minute you start using Purview, Purview is automatically going to start identifying all your AAD entities. So nothing that you have to do.
Yes.
Just one question. Sorry. So, can you give me an average of price of this this marvelous thing? I mean, is there any cost for this? Is by capacity, records, storage, or you can sum all the resources that you are using for this? Is there any way to budget the consuming of this thing?
That's a good question. So our pricing is available on the pricing page in Azure portal, or the pricing page. But essentially what we charge you is by capacity units, and how capacity unit scales is by the size of the catalog and how many interactions are happening on the catalog on a concurrent time. I know it's a very, very convoluted way of explaining it, and we are working on simplifying and sort of explaining in more human understandable terms. But right now what we have is capacity unit, which is a combination of how large is your catalog and how many users there are on the catalog searching and browsing and editing assets at a time.
Yeah, that's the reason that I'm asking you, because it is, if it is by capacity, okay, so that capacity includes, for example, the existing storage that I'm using from Azure Blob Storage, or is that included, or I should pay for for the Purview separated and also for the storage account? I mean, is that a whole package, or do I have to pay them individually?
No, you don't have to pay individually. That's actually a very good question, I have to say. So think of Purview as a SaaS product. So we do not want you to worry about your storage system and compute and all of that. No. You pay by capacity unit. We will help provision the storage system that is required or a database that might be required. You just have to register and scan your data sources. Yes, we charge you for scanning because that is a one-time process, and that will require us to spin up VMs. And depending on where your data sources are, we might have to, also build, SHIR, self-hosted integration runtime, or we might, there are companies who come and say, hey, we cannot use the, public link, we need to use private link. All of those are additional costs because they are additionally asked by the customer. But once your data assets reside in the Purview data map, you don't have to worry about storage. We just charge you for your consumption and capacity units.
Okay, so I should move everything there, and I can just pay a single, a single bill. Am I right?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay,
is
so
true.
that's great. That's great news because when you create a project we're using databases, storage, and stuff like that. If you look at the budget or the bill, it's it's a little expensive because you pay by each element separated, and if you pull them all together, you may see a big bill. So that is very good news. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely. And we are constantly getting feedback, and uh, pricing can become a huge hindrance. So we are looking at other ways of even simplifying it more for different size of customers and different use cases. So please stay tuned. We'll have more updates coming up on pricing as well over time.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. The good thing is the clarification about it's everything, everything included. So this is a very great
Yeah.
news.
Yes, it is exciting. I think
Yeah.
yes.
In fact, I have just a quick question. In this purview, what if I need to, for example, include data factory? Is this included, or shall I pay that also by separate, as separately?
So you see, Data Factory, you could be using Data Factory for various purposes, like your ETL transformation purposes. As long as your factory is registered in Purview, you don't have to do anything. The
Oh,
metadata is pushed into Purview automatically every time there is a pipeline run.
okay, more great news. Thank you again.
Yep.
Is there a way to group this purview like per project or something, and then put it on online and offline with one command? Kind of like a resource group.
Oh, okay. So can you help me understand the scenario a little more? Like,
Yeah, let's suppose there's a bunch of devices and there's a bunch of things that are under a specific rollout, and then you
mhm.
want to track all the data sets and everything else, but then after the trial you want to turn them off and then just bring it back home again live again, all together as a group. Can you group them together like a resource group?
Yes.
Yeah.
So today, the way customers do that is, I'll probably give a little different of an example. So today, customers create different Purview accounts to separate their dev, test, and prod accounts, right? Like, so let's say only the
Right.
data sets that are in prod need to be visible to everybody in the company. Everything else is hidden from the rest of the company, right? So the way they are managing this is through different accounts. We are actively thinking about how to bring it together under one roof so that you don't have to create multiple accounts, and that also Purview has full visibility of your end-to-end data sources. And that will actually light up the capability of what you want to be kept as live versus what you want to hide from your data consumers.
Okay.
Make sense?
So you can stage things before you make them available.
Correct. Yes, we are
That's
working on that.
that's
Yep.
that's what I was thinking. Okay, thank you.
I see we had Polly clarify her question about the friendly names. She didn't expect Purview to find the friendly names in the tables. She wanted to create like an import file with the table name, column name, and friendly name, and then be able to do an import of the friendly name into Purview. I don't know if that's
You know what? I would say, like, listening to this solution or the question, I think what you could use is the glossary term templates. And term templates are essentially meant to basically give you that friendly name, discoverable name sort of a thing. What it will give you is the capability to sort of bring in the column names, table names, everything. Today, you have to map them to the data assets manually, but we are working on automating that process where you can write rules and that matching will happen on a cadence automatically. So if you write a rule that any table that starts with, EMP means employee, so just tag, EMP tables with, glossary term employee, it will automatically tag those. So I would say, I would recommend trying term templates, see if that helps you.
Awesome. Okay, let me see. I don't see any more questions coming. Don't be shy. So if there are no more questions, going once, going twice, going I would like to, of course, thank you so much for this, Sunetra. Thank you for coming here today and show us all around Purview, answer all the questions. And I hope to have you again soon,
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time, and appreciate all the questions. I think we just finished our first anniversary as a GA product, and the interest from the field, from customers is just amazing. So please, feel free to shoot questions. I'm always going to be in touch with Cecilia, so through Cecilia or directly, whichever method.